Welcome to all the participants in the webcast on corporate finance leadership skills for the chartered accountants. We have with us today's speaker, CA Subi Balasubramaniam, with us. He is the experienced chartered accountant. Whenever we are talking about he has hold the positions of CFO and various position in that one is particularly if we will talk about the finance domain. He was earlier worked as a director of finance as well as CFO in Genser Technology, one of the uh, IT company based in Pune. And he has been involved in that one is particularly if you'll talk about the skill enrichment program, he has been involved in through the years. He's always there for that one is whenever we are talking about the skill enrichment programs. And he has written the books. He has spoken in the various programs in this CII, ASSOCHAM, as well as the ICI platform. With this, we welcome to today's speaker, CA Subi Balasubramaniam, in this live webcast. With this, I am handing over the session to CA Subi Balasubramaniam to take it forward.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Sambit Kumar, for the kind introduction. Today, I will be talking to you about the skills required for leadership in the finance domain in the industry. Just as we have the requisite knowledge-based skills as chartered accountants, as we transition from just handling the finance portfolio or one aspect of the finance portfolio to the various aspects that a corporate needs when you become the CFO. So we will talk about what are the key skills required and what are the attributes that are needed between now and 1 o'clock, by which time I think I will be able to wind up this session. I will first give you my presentation and maybe after half an hour, 45 minutes, invite questions. So please hold on to your questions. Am I loud and clear? Hello? Okay. I'm sharing my presentation. Corporate financial leadership skills for CAs. CFOs are rapidly emerging as catalysts in India in corporate journey in adopting to global environment. The training and knowledge of chartered accountant is invaluable in shaping off for the CFO. While it's not necessary that you have to be a finance specialist, by default, almost all well-run companies have chartered accountants as CFOs. And we will see why that is so by a combination of circumstances and compulsions. As India is on the threshold of rapid growth in the next decade, there's an urgent need for leadership in the finance domain. There is actually an acute shortage of good quality CFOs in industry, and that is widely acknowledged. Why is it so? It's essentially because the skill sets that are needed are not necessarily only of the finance domain. So we will kind of debate on this, see this, and then we'll be able to understand this better. Let's see how the CFO position itself has evolved in corporate India. Way back in 50s and 60s, there was this Munim G, who was the house accountant for the average businessman. As India started getting corporatized, more and more public limited companies came into the fold. Then we had this chief accountant, and he was in charge of the operations aspect. as India became a little more competitive when we opened up the markets, there was this position of all the heads of functions becoming general managers. So we had general manager finance, general manager marketing, general manager HR. So this general culture came into the being. And as India globalized with the Western world, we had this presidential format of designation of VP finance. And as we further kind of integrated ourselves well into the global economy, we have the chief financial officer. It's extremely important to understand the evolution of how this position has come along. And over the years, as India has globalized, today, I think there is no dispute on the fact that we are part of the global economy. And whatever happens in the global economy impacts us not only because of the foreign portfolio investment or the foreign domestic investment, but the sheer size and nature of India's economy and our own outreach to the Western world or the Eastern world and to the world economy. Organizations have across the board become international, whether it is in IT or whether it is in manufacturing or whether it is in pharmaceuticals or whether it is in pure services, exports. Everybody has become fairly international orientation. And therefore, the CFO's position has now more or less been aligned to the CFO's position anywhere else in the world in terms of both skill sets, expectations, and what is needed from the finance professional. Let's see what are the major skills that are required. I've identified 8 major skills, out of which the first one, we as chartered accountants tick the box: financial expertise and analytical skills. The second one is of strategic leadership. I'll explain each one of them. The third one is pretty simple and it's very self-defined, regulatory and compliance expertise. The fourth one, of course, is a little bit of a soft skill, but extremely important for the CFO's role, which is leadership and communication. The fifth one is, again, a hard skill, which is technology and digital acumen. The sixth one is general global financial knowledge, which is a little more extension of the limitation and boundaries of knowledge with which we have been kind of trained in. The seventh one is a very personal, which is ethical judgment, and it's more related to the character side of the personality of the person who holds the position, which is ethical judgment and integrity. And the last one is a slightly universal skill, which is adaptability and continuous learning. I will explain each skill in greater detail, and then I can pause and take any questions if you have. The first one is financial expertise and analytical skills. What are they? When you say financial expertise and analytical skills, it means the ability to forecast and budget on a rolling basis. It's called financial planning and analysis. All organizations have a budget, have a target, and your ability to forecast based on the actual results of a certain period, which is, say, a month or a quarter, what the next quarter is going to look like, what the second, third quarter is look like. By and large, most organizations will be able to forecast what the year will look like by end September, which is sometime around this time, because they know how long it takes to take orders and what will be the delivery cycle. So your ability to understand the business and forecast, everybody looks to the CFO. The second one is assessing financial risks. While there are so many risks any business have, there's reputation risk, there's quality risk, but as CFOs, your focus will be on analyzing the financial risks, which is basically in terms of exposure, in terms of currency, in terms of debtors, what are the debt policy, what is the credit policy, and so on. The third proficiency, of course, is, I think, something which anybody who qualifies, just qualified, has it. But in terms of application of Ind AS and IFRS, because you'll be handling your international accounts and consolidating it into the Indian accounts, You should have fairly decent working knowledge and proficiency of what are the disclosures and what are the standards. And that therefore is the third skill within the sub-skill. The fourth one, of course, all of us, when we qualify and as we develop in our roles, will have strong understanding of direct and indirect taxes.
सर यहाँ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में 31st की मिली है हमें और आज ही एग्जाम में कुछ फर्स्ट का छुट्टी हुआ है आज
हाँ।
ही बता रहे थे
2 दिन की छुट्टी एक्सटेंड हो गया ना फाइनल की डेट
हाँ तो ये मुझे आज ही पता
3 पे
चला
हो गया
तो
पेपर।
ये कुछ तो चेंजेस लगेंगे फिर
इसी की वजह से तो
30 की हो
Can you-
So
गई
your mic, can we mute your microphone, sir, Dr. Samit?
ये एनवाई वाला करने के लिए
बदला मैंने
वो वीडियो करने के लिए, लेकिन वो यूआई वो हेलो
Dr. Mishra, you'll have to mute your microphone. Thank you. The fourth one, of course, is strong understanding.
हाँ वो
of-
सब कॉपीराइट अप्रूव है, तुम करो अपने हिसाब से, कर लो सब कर लो सब कर लो अमित।
The fourth one, of course, is strong understanding of direct and indirect taxes. We all have a fairly decent understanding of taxes, but as applicable to the businesses to which we head or associated with, we need to have a clear understanding of the various relevant provisions of, now it's become all GST and customs, so that we are able to do the pricing properly and understand the implications of changes. The fifth one is a good grasp of business economics, both micro and macro. Economics as a subject is a fairly intense one, but in terms of the CFO's understanding of what the interest rates are trending towards, how the inflation is trending towards, what are the major policy definitions of the government, the subsidies that they're giving, the production linked incentives that they are giving, we should really be clued in on what are the initiatives the government is taking for growth and for employment and controlling inflation and understanding the forex rates and the interest rates. This is slightly internal, managing the accounting system. After all, the CFO is the head of the accounting system to ensure and give comfort that to the directors and to the managing director that the internal controls exist and they work in in a way that has been designed for the nature and size of the firm, and therefore, the relevant checks and balances, the financial reports being generated at the end of every period, whether it is monthly for the MIS, quarterly for the limited review, annually for the audited accounts, the various disclosures in terms of accounting standards, contingent liability. There's a whole host of SEBI-related disclosures, and understanding the various SEBI requirements, because these keep changing. With the times, and therefore the listing, if your company is listed, you need to have very clear understanding what are the listing requirements which SEBI has mandated, because there are two tracks of disclosures. One is from the company law point of view, the other one is from the SEBI point of view, that is Security Exchange and Board of India. And of course, the last one is understanding capital market structures, investor relations, stock market dynamics. Investor relations will have to be piloted by the CFO in terms of understanding what the strategy of the company is, how do you want to present it. The investors will have a lot of query on the accounts. Why is depreciation lower or higher? Why is the interest gone up? What are the correlationship? Where do you see the revenue trending? Where do you see your margins trending? That's a whole host of questions which investors will have, both from the analyst community and people who want to invest into it. It could be a foreign fund, it could be a foreign investor, or it could be a combination of so many of these mutual fund analysts who keep visiting your offices for their feedback. So the first skill is financial expertise and analytical skills, and these can cover almost the entire spectrum of what a chartered accountant is initially trained and has a good grasp over the subject as is applicable to the industry in which he is functioning. Let's move to the next skill, which is slightly esoteric, that is strategic leadership. Now, what do you mean by that? Strategy as a subject is clearly a way as how you will win in your business. There are so many definitions of strategy, but the simplistic definition is how are you going to win against competition? So the ability to win and keep on winning is what strategy is all about, which is why, you need to think long term rather than just short term. As accountants or as people trained to look at shorter periods, we look at a quarter, we look at a half year, we look at a year, and our entire focus is moving from year to year. We need to shift gears and keep looking at how can we look at it where the business will be trending 3 years from now, 5 years from now. We live in a world of wild uncertainty, what we call the VUCA world. It's volatile, it is uncertain, it is complex, it is ambiguous. But despite all that, the CFO has a very major role in defining the strategy and the direction, along with other members of the team. But in terms of the fact that the language of business is accounting, the CFO has a major role in giving a structure to that. Mergers and acquisitions, your ability to identify targets, due diligence, price negotiation, executing the merger, and then post-integration of the operation. It's most organizations not only keep growing purely by organic growth. When you sell the same stuff in different markets by yourself, it is organic. The inorganic way is acquiring companies, acquiring like businesses or allied businesses, whether it's forward integration or backward integration. For that, the entire M&A effort is led by the CFO as part of the overall strategy. So typically, if your organization is planning to grow at 12% or 15% compound, you'll be very clear about how much you will go organically and how much you will go through M&A, which is mergers and acquisitions. So the mergers and acquisitions involves a fairly detailed process of identifying the target, negotiating the pricing, at what price you will buy the business, and at what will be the due diligence that you will do to ensure that those businesses well compliant and doesn't have any hidden liabilities. And then you will kind of figure out how to kind of execute the actual merger, working with lawyers, working with the sellers, and most critical, how do you integrate it? That's a whole process by itself, and one does develop expertise just by doing it. Cost management, in fact, the institute has recognized that cost management is no more related to only just simply pricing and margins. It has become a very strategic related subject. That is why there's a particular paper also in final on strategic cost management, leading to initiatives of how you can optimize operational efficiencies, where you can do the cost reductions, how do you price vis-a-vis the competition. There's a whole host of skills that one develops within one's industry, especially when the industry is extremely competitive, like say pharma or FMCG or IT. So, and if you have say 150 products, 200 products, what we call stock keeping units, and you have to do the pricing for each of them within various subcategories, there's a completely different skill in terms of understanding how pricing can add customers, and sometimes pricing will have to meet the regulatory requirements of the various regulators. Say in pharma, you have the DPCO, price control order, or the various other departments which monitor. A lot of pharma products come under pricing controls, and therefore, how do you kind of fix margins in such a way? Likewise, in the export markets, how do you penetrate various export markets to strategic pricing and cost? Likewise, in operational efficiency. So strategic leadership involves not only the nitty-gritty transactional aspects of day-to-day business, but a much more broader issue of where your company will be, what are the initiatives that you need to take, how much of M&A you will have to do, and what will be the leadership that you will give in the cost management. That is what is meant by strategic cost management. The third one is, of course, something which we do on a fairly easy in terms of it's not a new skill, it's just an extension of our own skill base that we have. Corporate governance, anybody who is kind of done, has CA kind of passed the exam, will have a basic understanding of board meetings, starting right from prospectus, a public issue, to conducting the board, minutes of the board meeting, the various regulatory aspects in terms of maintaining books of accounts, in terms of dividend declaration. And SEBI has all kinds of reports, the ESG reports, statutory requirements. So corporate governance has become a very major central point in valuations and as part of CFO's life. And this is where the entire function has to be integrated in such a way that there is complete adherence. There is secretarial audit at the end of the period. There is a general audit by the statutory auditors in terms of adherence to corporate governance. And both the CFO and the managing director sign off the accounts. They give a declaration that there is no false or materially misleading statements within the accounts. All that is part of the corporate governance. Regulatory compliance also ability to keep the risk management aspects in terms of anticipating, analyzing, and mitigating financial risks. There are various laws in terms of how you can kind of behave in terms of handling forex. There's a FEMA to which you have to kind of adhere to. There's an Anti-Money Laundering Act, AMLA, as we call it, in terms of being very careful about beneficiary ownership and so on. And labor laws in terms of number of hours worked, in terms of ESI, in terms of PF, in terms of gratuity. So there's a whole host of not only tax-related regulatory compliance, but also compliance with related to governance and the law of the land. Now, just think about it. It's not only related to India. As I said in the opening statement, most businesses are now international. So you have to be regulatory compliant with relationship with all the territories that you're operating. Just imagine if you are an IT company, you're operating in US, UK, couple of, say, countries in Germany, Sweden, in Europe, or for that matter, all countries in all the major markets in Europe. But by and large, they follow the EU regulations there. And coming to Far East, whether it's in China or Japan or Australia or Singapore or within Africa, South Africa, you have to be very clear about compliance with each of those territories. Of course, you will build your substructures, you will have controllers, you will have accountants, but you being in the top is going to be held responsible to give a compliance comfort to the board and to the audit committee that we have not violated any law knowingly. And we have put in all those checks and balances that are required to make the organizational compliant. So regulatory compliance is a very, very important skill. And as you develop the substructures and structures within the organization based on your knowledge, of course, we take external help. Today, there are a lot of software available to kind of aid you in the process in terms of what are the regulatory aspects which are very particularly to an industry. Say, for example, you are in the pharma industry. Pharma industry is highly regulated, or you are in an industry like in food products, whether you're selling FMCG or whether you're selling coffee, tea, eatables. There's a fair amount of regulation. Then there are safety related issues if you are in manufacturing. So your awareness of regulation is not related to just the bread and butter of, say, labor law. I mean, everybody who's been will realize that no, we have to pay the ESI. I mean, we have to deposit ESI. We have to ensure PF is up to date. There's no violation there. We have to ensure that gratuity is up to date. And apart from that, there's a whole host of regulatory laws, both what they call safety and occupational and health related regulatory laws, especially in some advanced countries. And you have to be very careful, and you have to be on top of it. So quite apart from corporate governance and money laundering and FEMA, there are some of these other regulatory laws, which one has to be very, very careful about. You've got to develop that skill, which is what I call the crucial one, because you are at the center there in terms of regulatory aspects. You also have to kind of be very careful about all the, I think somewhere I'm coming down to it, but in case I don't, adherence to all the laws will be tested by various agencies, whether it is income tax or enforcement directorate or Department of Revenue Intelligence, if they get a complaint, or customs. If you have been clean and your records are reasonably well adhered to, you'll have no problems. They will come, they will look at it, and they will go away. So you will have to lead the response to show cause notices, which will keep coming from time to time. The third one is leadership and communication. Intuitively, you realize that this is extremely important. You have to be well articulate. But I can tell you there are three specific aspects of this. The first one is team leadership. You will have to lead the team. That means under you, I mean, it's a large company. The one that I was heading, I had about 185 people and about 65 chartered accountants all over the world. So you have to build the team, ensure that there is no attrition, you have to ensure their aspirations are met, and end of the day, everybody performs in a synchronous way, that the outcome of that is a high performing finance team, fostering collaboration across various departments. Because not only is finance the language of business, or rather accounting the language of business, but finance is the central mother function. Your ability to respond to the challenges could be, we have to give the pricing in the next 4 days, otherwise we may not get that bid. Or your challenges could be in ensuring that the audits, in terms of statutory audits, in terms of internal audit, in terms of various other audits, are done within time and without any conflict, understanding relationship with the external auditors. It's quite a task, I can assure you. The second one is managing the board. I mean, board meetings can be very, very stressful, and it's extremely important to be in constant dialogue, take their guidances, because they're fairly senior executives sitting there in the board. And managing the board involves understanding what is their needs, what is the perception, and you articulating your point of view in terms of the various committee meetings, of which the audit committee is the most powerful and one which will take a lot of your time. The risk committee, understanding what is your risk framework, how are you mitigating those risks, and what actually it's involved in terms of ensuring on an ongoing basis of reviewing the risk and see whether the existing mitigation measures are okay. The grievances committee from shareholders, you'll have a lot of complaints. How have you quickly disposed with that? The banking committee, to ensure that there are appropriate rules put in terms of handling excess cash, excess liquidity, where do you invest, how much you can invest. For example, the banking committee can put a policy which says that you cannot invest more than X crores in a fund, in one fund house, to ensure that you're well spread over and you're not putting in just one fund house. So some of these you will have to ensure and give the communication, that comfort. Partly your body language, partly your being on top of the subject will give them that comfort, because there's nothing the board or the committee can get into in-depth into operations. So you are the link between the board and the actual transaction details, which happens on a day-to-day basis. Then the external stakeholders are very many, and you will have to lead the show in terms of investment analysts, quarterly calls. The press might be interested in any development. What is your take on, say, a change in the law, So you have to be very careful, work very closely with your corporate communication team and ensure that you don't make any controversial statements. But at the same time, you have to front end your organization in clearly articulating. So communication in terms of understanding the subject and presenting it to the board, to the various stakeholders is very critical. And that is where a CFO will step in, because almost all aspects of business can be traced back to finance. For example, say you bought a new company, you made a new acquisition. So you will have to take and explain the financial implications of this acquisition. How is it going to add value to you? What are all the assumptions in terms of the strategic fit that you're making into that particular acquisition for your business? Likewise, sometimes you might disinvest a business and therefore you may have to take the lead. Or sometimes, you could have a huge controversy with relation to your company. So you will have to explain your point of view to the press, because they always look to the finance CFOs for ensuring that what is the real financial impact of any decisions. So I can't tell you how critical this function is in terms of developing leadership and in the communication function. We all naturally have this. It's a question of getting used to it, taking more and more opportunities. I would encourage chartered accountants to participate in your local branch seminars, give as much talks as possible, teach for the local CAs branches. The more you're able to express, the more you're able to articulate, more it will come to you naturally. So it's extremely important you develop it over a period of time. And this is again a skill which is extremely valuable, because you are making a point of view with your own persuasive skills. In fact, the institute has very specific programs for improving communication in the GMCS and soft speaking skills. But those are just basically only tools to you. It's up to you to kind of develop hard on this. Technology and digital acumen. Honestly, when I started my career in 1983, technology was not really so much, because we were not so automated. We were all on vouchers and handwritten ledgers, and at best a mainframe computer would print out the ledger. Somebody did the keying in of the vouchers. But today we have reached a stage where everything is on the cloud, and the whole thing, whether payments are all we make payments through the net, everything and anything is on the web. In terms of both your ability, your systems are highly computerized and highly integrated. Your own records are no more manual. So your ability to understand the ERP system is absolute must. Where is the ERP giving problems, or where is the integration needed? When do you have to modernize your existing ERP? What are the subsystems which are feeding into the main ERP? All that, of course, one learns from experience. We start with the basic Tally, and then we move forward to whether to Oracle or SAP or any of the other frontline ERP systems, and have a good grip on what can go wrong, or how can you improve and automate. Now with more emerging technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, the automation levels have been taken much higher, but not very many use cases. It's still emerging, but your understanding of technology is absolutely crucial. While you may have a digital chief information officer, please understand that the cost implications of technology adoption or lack of it is very, very high. If you're not in pace with what is required in terms of what your organization needs for its growth prospects, then you'll be falling way behind. Today, it's very common in most well-run companies to finalize the audit within 15-20 calendar days post the closing. You take any IT company. In fact, we used to boast that, look, we have finished it in 10 days, the auditor takes 7-8 days more. So this essentially because of very, very high level of automation. And understanding that and the digital transformation is what you will have to give the lead. This skill one gets by constantly upgrading itself. There are lots of material on the net, and it's purely common sense. There's nothing great about it. But yes, you've got to have a feel on use technologies, and today, whether you like it or not, we are on net banking, we are on WhatsApp, and actually we are now having this over Zoom. So your what I call the digital DQ, the digital quotient keeps on going up. Your ability to send a photograph or send a file over WhatsApp, or compress a file, convert a PDF to Word, Excel level of knowledge, of advanced level, is just taken for granted. Those are all very basics. So if you really dig into your digital quotient, and then you kind of understand where is that you need to kind of need help, is something that you need to kind of understand. But the bottom line is, you really have to be at a level where you can hold a conversation and understand the financial implication of any digital initiative that you take in terms of your organizational need for cutting edge technologies. So that's the fifth skill. Should I take any questions, Dr. Sambit, at this point of time? Hello? Should I take any questions? Are there any questions from the participants? Dr. Sambit, are you there?
Yeah, I am there. I am there.
Is there any questions from participants?
No, at last we will ask the question. That technical person will put up the questions in the chat box only, Zoom chat box. You will get it the questions.
Now
Bharat!
or after it's
Bharat!
over?
Bharat, you just put all the question in the Zoom chat box so that he can answer the questions. Okay.
But you'll do it now or
Continue, sir.
Okay.
Continue. At last we can answer the question.
All right. Okay. I'm clear about it then. So let me move to the next skill, which is global financial knowledge. Now, it's extremely important. Very few companies, if at all any, the slightly larger companies, even if it is a 500 crore company, they're all having international operations. Now, those international operations can be localized to a few countries. It could be Malaysia, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, or it could be in the Western world in terms of US, and US also, it could be on the East Coast, it could be on the West Coast, or it could be Midwest, or it could be Canada, UK, or if your entire focus is on European Union, or sometimes it could be Eastern Europe in terms of Russia, of course, now with the war and things like that, or it could be on the Far East, China, Japan, Singapore, Vietnam. As India gets globalized, and depending on who owns your company, where is your collaboration, where are your collaborators, where is your joint venture partners, where are your technical partners, where is the addressable market? If you are an export related entity, most all organizations that I can think of have a certain quantum of exports. It's extremely important to understand the international operations in terms of cross-border transactions and regulatory environments. I covered this in terms of governance, but international operations by itself, is unique by itself. If you are specialized in, say, South African or say Middle East, Dubai, excuse me, what is the VAT provisions there? What are the VAT provisions in South Africa? How does it differ from the GST here in India? So global financial knowledge by and large, the science of double entry accounting is the same world over. But there's a lot of difference between IFRS and Ind AS in terms of disclosures, in terms of understanding of how we treat in terms of, say, simple things like capital gains, or in terms of ownership, in terms of entity, in terms of shareholding. Which are the different types of shareholding? Do we have shareholders who are essentially only voting, non-voting? So the whole gamut of international operations in terms of the various aspects that I mentioned, one has to be having a fairly decent working knowledge. Of which, of course, currency and foreign exchange management is very critical in terms of covering your risks, in terms of your earnings, in terms of understanding which country allows repatriation, which countries to what extent. Some African countries don't allow you to repatriate. They kind of say that no, you can only repatriate a certain element, or all the profits will have to be reinvested. Depending, it varies from territory to territory. So understanding the global financial knowledge is therefore very, very critical, especially because you are the person heading the finance function. And as I said, everything is translated to money. Excuse me. And it's extremely important that you have a grip of what really is happening. Ethical judgment and integrity. I'll just take a break. I'll just drink a little water, please. As India is getting more globalized, and as the world is seeing so much of financial frauds, white collar crimes, it's one of the aspects which has become very, very critical is what are the corporate ethics, and how do you kind of handle your judgment in terms of ethics and integrity. Adherence to value systems with an emphasis on ethical accounting practices and maintaining transparency with shareholders is extremely important in terms of, a reputation risk can completely damage your own businesses, and you will have to ensure those frameworks are put as what is acceptable behavior, what is not acceptable behavior. Because world over, there are so many other provisions relating to corruption, relating to bribery, relating to how do you report whistleblower concerns, what are the ethics committee frameworks that you have in the organization. So corporate ethics takes a very large portion of governance, and as a CFO, you will have to give the policies, the guidelines, and understanding for the rest of the organization. And you have to constantly keep refreshing it so that there is no related party transactions that you don't know. There are no conflicts within the organization that you're not aware of. So some of these code of conduct related issues in terms of how we will behave, how the organization will deal with suppliers, how the organization will deal with vendors, how the organization will deal with employees, all that comprises of a part of corporate ethics. So as CFOs, we have a very, very, very big part in ensuring that we are up to date with the best practices. And there is, of course, a lot of literature, a lot of help you can take from consultants. But it's extremely important, not only from a point of view of having good governance, but constantly training people. You constantly have to train your sales folks, your purchase flow folks who are dealing with the external world, and ensure that, look, these are the ethical boundaries which cannot be crossed under any circumstances. So this leadership has to be given by the CFO himself, because we are essentially the conscience keepers of the organization's soul. Though they say organization is a body without a person without a body, but an organization has got a soul, and we are the ones who keep that corporate entity alive. Crisis management, as I told you earlier on, in periods of stress, financial distress, or regulatory scrutiny, we will have to give the leadership. There will be regulatory scrutiny because nature of regulations is such. And if a CFO is there to kind of answer the questions with authority, with background, with documentation, by and large, you can explain a position and the regulatory will kind of understand your position point of view, as long you have not done any hanky-panky. So it's extremely important that you give the leadership in terms of ethical judgment and integrity. Again, it's a skill, personal value systems. If you give the leadership, then people down the line in your department, in your organization will adhere to it. So it's extremely important the CFO is seen as an ultimate symbol of ethics and judgment and integrity in the system. Adaptability and continuous learning. One of the aspects for a CFO is to being flexible. We specialize in the industry that we are associated with. Speaking for myself, I started with tire industry, so I know everything about tires. You need to know because if you're doing product costing, you'll know everything about the manufacturing part. And if you are in management accounting, which I was, I understood the sales part pretty well in terms of channels, distribution, pricing, product performance, services, returns, the whole aspects of what makes this business tick. And it's a continuous process. You not only learn from your own operations, but interestingly, you learn from the competition also. What is competition doing differently? And that comes from a certain curiosity, a certain understanding, chatting with people, visiting markets, learning from dealers, learning from channel partners, learning from other countries. So industry knowledge, the industry that one is operating in. Now, there are various subsectors of industry, but broadly, you could be in consumer product, as we call it, whether it's beverages or food related items or fast moving consumer goods, whether it is electronics or whether it is household items, or it could just be food staples in the retail space, or it could be in pharma. In pharma also, there are various subcategories. You could only be in central nervous system diseases or in cardiac or in related to nephrology, so on and so forth. But each industry is very unique and the learning curve is pretty steep. It takes a person 5, 6 years, 7 years to understand the uniqueness. Just imagine you are a CFO of a telecom company. How does the billing take place? How does a customer is acquired? How does a customer gets ported? So there's a fair amount of jargon terminology which is very specific. If you have been a CFO of, say, IT by itself, it's a huge ocean in terms of depth of how do you acquire customers, how do you deploy people, how do you ensure that deliveries happen on time within cost. So industry knowledge is extremely important. The other one which is extremely important in terms of continuous learning is cultural sensitivity. See, India is a very diverse country, and therefore a fair amount of it comes to us automatically. The cultures are different. The Western cultures and the Eastern cultures, the Japanese culture is completely different from even within the US. People in the East Coast have a different cultural value than people from West Coast. East Coast people are more formal, whereas people on the West Coast are more relaxed and more informal. Understanding the cultural sensitivity, especially using languages, body languages, it's a subject by itself. Likewise, they find it very difficult to kind of adjust to our culture, and therefore understanding various behavior in a multicultural thing. And this is a very continuous thing. I mean, today it's also helpful if you've worked in one of those foreign territories for some period of time to actually imbibe, but not really required, but it is helpful if you've worked in one of those territories. So I've covered about the 8 major skills, but these are also on three pillars on which leadership happens. It's not enough that you have these skills or develop these skills. It's extremely important you have all these three pillars, which is let us understand the path and the journey from entry level. Anybody who joins an organization is given the equivalent title of junior executive. So if it takes about 2 years, they assess you, are you culturally fit? Are you smart enough to quickly be on the uptake? And so many other qualities of your knowledge level. Here it's more of knowledge, less of leadership, but seeing your potential. Then 5 years, you are assistant manager. So you are part of helping managing a function. You have a couple of executives with you. So 3 years plus, I mean, 2 years is over. By 5 years, you'll be in 3 years more an assistant manager. You'll become a manager and you'll be there anything between 8 years experience. After 8 years experience of managing, you become a functional head in 10 years experience. That means you are handling a function. Say, for example, if you are in indirect taxes, you may be handling the GST part of indirect taxation, or you may be handling the direct taxes. Or if your organization is multi geographic, you may say that, look, I'm managing entire South Africa in terms of the entire aspects of controllership, which is sales, sales, collections, accounts payables, accounts receivables, of course, are covered in terms of collections. So sales, accounts receivable, account payable, fixed assets, and compliance. So when you come about 5 years of that, around 15 years, you will be having a good general manager. Now, from manager to general manager, all these skills that I gave you, all these 8 skills, you will get enough chances, but not all. I mean, you may not be able to front it, but in your own way, in your own departmental meetings, in your own meetings with senior management, you will be able to do the communication part, the leadership part. You'll be able to understand, imbibe, learn every day. At 20 years experience, one becomes a vice president. And if provided you exhibit a lot of leadership skills. Now, what is the leadership skills? It's not only soft skills, but also skills in relation to managing people, which is a vast topic, but generally understood. Both the subject knowledge, the technical knowledge, managing people, managing situations. Then by 25 years experience, you'll become a CFO. Roughly everybody has got about 33, 35 years of career, depending on when you want to retire or when you want to kind of say that, look, I've had enough. So you get an 8 to 10 year, roughly 8 to 10, 12 years of continuous run as a CFO. So this is where the path in India typically happens. And all these skills that I mentioned, obviously you cannot have it from day one, but if you have the potential, well-run organizations identify leaders and keep on giving them the training in some, if not all of these. Some you have to develop. International taxation, nobody will train you. Of course, you have to attend courses. Of course, you will have to figure out what are the transfer pricing regulations, rules, what are the under which particular aspect is your company operating in, which of course your accounting background and your tax background will help you imbibe. But things like handling regulations or handling external world or handling M&A will come based at its right time when you get an opportunity. So what are the pillars? Let us see. The first one is trust. I always tell people that we are not in the business of finance, we are in the business of trust. As chartered accountants, we win the trust of our clients when we practice. As accountants or as finance managers or as the CFO, you win the trust of all the stakeholders in the company. You will be the conscience keepers of not only the firm, but also its values and integrity. So if you're not able to win the trust, then you cannot become the CFO. So trust has a huge role in developing relationships, both internal and external, on what is acceptable behavior. Some of which is very, it could be the little things which make the difference. Are you returning calls? Are you taking difficult, to how to say no to a person? Are you kind of shying away? Are you kind of meeting your commitments? Can you be relied upon? Are you reliable enough to deliver? Do you promise and do you deliver, or you promise and don't keep your promises or give excuses? These are all the aspects in day-to-day life of very little things. Simple things like coming to a meeting on time is also a signal that you are radiating that, look, I'm trustworthy. Organization cultures by actions and gestures. Over a period of time, little things morph into reputation and brand equity of an individual. So right from the first day, I always advise people, ask yourself how trustworthy you are, and you will get the answers partly by how people respond to you and partly by your own actions. So the first pillar for being a successful CFO is essentially the trust that you kind of generate from your own actions, your own leadership skills, your own attitudes will make you a very successful CFO. The second one, of course, is strategic thinking. Look, you are shaped up based on what you think. It's a very cliche statement, but let's kind of look at it from a point of view of the fact that everybody in the organization is on a transactional level. They're all handling the day-to-day issues, chasing targets, how you do the quarter, how you kind of look at it. Whereas you will have to do both. You have to keep one eye on your quarterly performance, on which are the areas which are doing well, which are the areas which are not doing well, what can be done to correct it within the quarter. But you're also focused on the long term. And that comes from taking decisions never for the short term, but for the long term. Now, this is again ability to shift focus. As finance personnel, we are trained to think short term. Most human beings are, but because anything to do with accounting has got a period limitation. Everything and anything related to period, and more so because we are all trained in accrual accounting. We want to ensure match revenues to cost within a period. So willy-nilly, we become used to talking in terms of short term. You have to elevate yourself, step up and be a top-class manager and look at things strategically. You have to develop your decision-making without cognitive bias, which is inevitable. A bias is, again, a situation where we take decisions based on data. We don't take decisions instinctively. We analyze the decisions saying in terms of what could be the short-term implication, what could be the long-term implication. And there's a whole host of biases of which two major ones are neglect of probability and overconfidence bias. We tend to become overconfident when we are successful, and we tend to we negate probability of failure because we don't look at it saying that I have always been successful. Now, strategic thinking involves not only a mental shift, but also training yourself to think with data, filter yourself out for cognitive biases, because the only person in the organization having a 360-degree view is the CFO. Even the CEO will not have a full 360-degree view because he's focused. Most CEOs in this country and in the world are focused on sales and acquisition. Marketing, they always come from marketing background or engineering background if you're a product company. Whereas the CFO is able to understand from point of view of the impact of what a product can do, what a pricing can do, what quality can do, what talent management can do, what is it that you need to do to position yourself vis-a-vis competition, what is the impact of government regulations, what is the impact of tax regulations, what is the impact of economy changes, of what are the geopolitics impacting the existing economy, the whole host of issues. And therefore, This comes from understanding strategy, understanding and learning in terms of how do you focus strategy with numbers? Because strategy can be a very what I would say an English dominated subject. You can speak on strategy for hours, but unless you're able to put it in numbers and what it means to the organization, as how is it impacting you in terms of your growth and your profitability. There are only two things: growth, profitability. Of course, now the third thing has come, which is sustainability. Can you sustain this existing growth? Can you sustain these margins? That is how value is created. Because if you're a listed company, most certain companies are listed, they are looking from a point of view of what has been your value creation, how are you sustaining it, can you be trusted to sustain it, and it's not a flash in the pan. Nothing is flash in the pan. Everything is planned with great strategy, with a great strategic intent, and a large amount of contribution comes from the CFO. So the first pillar is trust. The second pillar is strategic thinking. It's extremely important that you train yourself to think strategically. We are all trained to think transactionally. Look at each transaction. Is the transaction going to impact something regulatory? Is the transaction, how is it going to impact my tax related, or how is it going to impact my profitability? To overcome that and come and look at it strategically is a shift that only a person can make. There are no shortcuts, and comes from consciously developing oneself. The third one is balancing the conflict. Let's give you a clear example. A typical CFO will say, what happens if we invest developing our people and then they leave us? That's a problem every company has. A CEO will say, what happens if we don't and they stay? That is a strategic shift. Every conflict, we assume because of our training that, look, what is the cost benefit? We train these people, all these people run away. Look at it from a strategic point of view. We train people, but those people will stay because we have trained them, and they see a career in front of us because of our training. So this is how you develop the ability to balance conflict. Because conflicts are a daily battle that a CFO has to endure. Only the tough decisions come to a CFO's table. If everything is, as they say, smooth seas don't make good sailors, or rather other way around. Rough seas make good sailors. So likewise, your ability to resolve conflict, see the larger picture, is a daily battle between the internal world and the external world. There will be shortage of people, shortage of resources. There's a change in the law which impacts your business. People, talent, skills, resources will always be in short supply. That's given. You'll never have a situation where you have everything. Then you're not a manager, you're not needed really. Your ability to handle, balance the conflict, of course, it comes from experience, but it also comes from a confidence of saying that, look, I have done that, I will figure out a way of how I can find the mid path. Conflict resolution is a vast subject by itself, and developing that skill is the fact that which will make you more and more reliable and more trustworthy and more the person to go to. The pressures of the environment, some with vested interest, will challenge the status quo. Well, all businesses kind of get pressured from various vested interests. It could be, a group outside with a political bias. It could be competition inspired vested interest. So many issues which keep coming up, especially if you are a unionized organization, it could be from an internal issue. But all conflicts can be resolved with dialogue, conversation, understanding, reaching out, talking to people. And there are methods of balancing conflict. Managing the conflict and resolving issues, it takes time for the skill to develop and mature, but it's extremely important that you develop the trust, you think strategically, and you balance the conflict. These three are vital attributes on the foundation of those 8 skills. So how are these aspirations met? The most important aspect is you really look at the first slide that I show you, CFO is like, Goddess Durga with so many hands. Likewise, you really look at it, you have so many aspects to consider in the organization. You are the last, as President Truman says, the buck stops here. You had a sign on the desk saying all problems come to me and I have to give a decision. People will be shifting the decision making upwards. Most critical thing is managing energy levels. It's extremely important that therefore that you don't get overwhelmed because of stress, because of so much of task ahead of you, or because of so many aspects which challenge you. Energy levels managing is the most important aspect for a CFO. You have to put in long hours. I mean, you don't even count. You suddenly realize it is afternoon, and when you suddenly look at the watch, it is already late evening, and still you carry on. More so if you're working for an international business because of time zone related issues. Your day actually starts at 7 o'clock if you have a East Coast, ends maybe at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Sometimes you have to take calls at 3 o'clock if you're in the middle of M&A. So you have to manage your energy levels, and there are many ways of doing it, of remaining, but the most crucial one is absolute must is a fitness regime. CFOs are very successful, are generally very fit in terms of having a regime. Now that could be going to the gym on a daily basis, or yoga and meditation, or most of us would like to run. I'm not a runner, I'm the yoga meditation types. But all I'm trying to tell you is you have to manage energy levels to be successful. Because there are long hours, whether you like it or not, and there's international travel. A fair amount of travel is involved, and you're back from US, you work for 2-3 days, you're going to Japan, you're coming back again a week, you have a board meeting, you're traveling, you're coming back. And the nature of the job is sedentary. You're not visiting customers or, like marketing, driving, meeting people all the time you're on the road. No, you're locked in with your conference room, your conference calls. Nowadays, of course, everything has become video calls or Zoom calls, and you are there physically present in the conference room. The sedentary nature of job doesn't allow you to get into, if you kind of don't have a fitness regime, you'll be very, very tired, and what is the ultimate aspect, what they call is burnout. So the critical aspect is that managing energy levels are important, and energy levels goes up and down in terms of not having the patience, irritability, conflict, differences of opinion not resolved, and so on and so forth. The ability to switch off and focus on process rather than outcomes is the key. Always look at a problem from the problem and not the individual. All this takes enormous amount of training and a conscious self-realization that, yes, these are the aspects that one needs to work on, one needs to kind of develop. As I told you, you have those 20-25 years before you become a CFO. Definitely 20-25 years, wherever you are in your career, you just look back and then look forward. Now, I'm not seeing the questions, but generally questions said, look, you can be a CFO at a very young age. Yeah, of course you can be. Some people are gifted. I mean, Tendulkar made his debut at an age where normal cricketers don't make. Everybody is not a Tendulkar. But generally, I mean, if you really look at the age profile, the later you come, the more mature you become, the more confident you become, provided you developed on all those 8 skills in some form of the other. I'm not saying you have to develop all those 8 skills 100%. You play on your strength. In some aspects, you're very strong. Some aspect you can take help. I'll elucidate more when I come to the question and answer session. And like to leave you with this, that behind every good company is a great CFO. That goes without saying. Thank you for your attention. Now I'll take your questions. Is there in the chat box? Fantastic. My apologies. I should have put it in presentation mode, but I got this later on. Corporate is not an exhaustive word. Which entities are under corporate finance? Well, I think what is applicable, I'm talking of limited companies, of which there are close to some 5,000 or 5,500 listed. It could be, as you said, it could be educational institutions, it could be in the health sector, it could be in defense, it could be in government. But wherever there is competition and wherever you need to be nimble-footed and be answerable, that is where I think all these qualities are needed. I feel technical overview knowledge is very important for an effective financial strategy. Yeah, that goes without saying. I'm sorry, I didn't see this because these came later. I'll send some questions in chat. Can I give a free frameworks or practice which are freshers to build their careers? Yeah, freshers to build the careers, use the framework, those 8 skills that I have listed, and you consciously work on it. Ask yourself, you should have that burning ambition that, like, I want to be a great CFO. And what is it that I need to do? What is it that I need to do? I've given you step by step how to develop these skills, how to develop these leadership attributes, and how that will finally make you successful. Do you recommend ICAI to make some of the soft skills? Yes. ICAI is already done in a fairly large, and in a way, they have the GMCS, which is 30 days in Center of Excellence, where there are specific modules of what I taught you. There is, I myself do one on strategic thinking and critical thinking. I also do one on leadership. So ICAI training has aspect. Now, if you say that ICAI training as part of the curriculum and final exam, no, I wouldn't recommend it because please understand, our course is vast. Our subjects are intense, and we need to get into the depths of first the technical aspects of our subject. Once we get the technical aspects, then we get entry into any corporate. Any decent corporate has all these training programs where they identify people with potential. Now you ask me, how do you know whether I have potential or not? For that also there are tests. For that also they will kind of tell you, this is where you need to develop your leadership. Do you have initiative? Do you have attitude? Do you have the personal presence? Is your communication skill good enough, or you need to improve on it? How good is your ability with the languages? Can you write clear grammar without a flawless grammar English in such a way that you can articulate your position? We grew up in an era where everything had to be put in a note. If I wanted to say something, I had to put a note to my boss. This is the introduction. This is the subject matter that I'm talking about. These are the alternatives of decisions, and this is what the decision for which I need your approval. So when you train yourself to think logically, it will automatically come. I would not recommend to put this because it's already there in some bits and pieces, but the exam will have to go through the technical part. You have to be good in taxes, you have to be good in international taxation, you have to be good in risk management, you have to be very good in the core subjects of accounting standards and financial reporting. And of course, backed by whatever knowledge is there in your day-to-day training under your principal. And then you are just raw material for whichever organization absorbs you, and they constantly give you training, because it's not uniform. I mean, by the principles of accounting are uniform, but each organization has its own code, it has its own protocols, and each business is completely different. If you join a bank, it's different from within a bank. There's retail banking, there is corporate banking, then there is risk management and audit and compliance, and then there is project industrial banking, project banking, long term, and then there is M&A. Then there is, you can go to, there are equity analysts on the investment side. Likewise, if you join an insurance company, the entire gamut of the subjects involved is completely different, and you kind of look at it that way. So I wouldn't recommend it to the institute for this, but yes, as part of session is yeah, I will send the presentation to the professional committee, today's presentation, and you can have it for your future guidance. How do you manage scarcity of skill resources? It's a very good question. You identify and train constantly. Because as I told you, short term, you outsource. You outsource to a CA firm where they'll fill in the gap. Say, for example, you need 6 people in your tax team and you only have 4. So you have to kind of get those dates on compliance. So it's extremely important that you, whatever can be outsourced to a CA firm on a contract for 2 years, get freshers and start developing them. Now, the whole problem starts with the fact that identification is it's a skill by itself. For want of a better word, most corporates go and say, okay, you got a rank, you cleared it in this attempt, so you must be good, without really understanding, while that is a filter that they have to use, but that's a very lazy filter. Your ability to get a person to see his leadership qualities, his potential, his attitude, how can I develop this guy? And it's a constant thing. I mean, finance leadership development is what the CFO himself, I personally would be interested in the future of every single guy whom I recruit and control, not only my direct reports, but 2 or 3 levels lower. And that is how you build your resources, and you kind of over a 3-year period or a 5-year period have 2 people for the same function, so that if somebody for whatever reason gets promoted or goes to some other group company, you're able to fill in from inside. Good HR practices, or rather I'll put good people practices, will help you develop meet the scarcity of resources. What basic qualities an individual should inculcate so that they can excel in their workplace? Well, it's a very generic question, but let me kind of answer this. First is, have an attitude that I got to learn. It's a vast ocean and I got to learn a lot. The problem with today's consumeristic mindset is, I need more money, I need so many lakhs, that company is paying me, why are you not company? Then you're finished. Because then you don't have a thirst for knowledge and learning. When you have a thirst for knowledge and learning, any organization will open up a lot of doors. Extremely important that you have this mental attitude that I have thirst for learning. And our profession, any subject, you take any subject, take taxation, it's a vast ocean. Take corporate law, another ocean. Take banking and treasury, takes years to master some of those practices, terminologies, the fair amount of certification. Take risk management, that's again a depth of subject. Take pricing, that's a huge subject by itself. Take internal audit. Most people don't want to do internal audit. I really don't understand that. The best way to learn about the organization is to be in internal audit for a couple of years. You know the exact how this organization ticks and what makes it function. When we started our career, I started an internal audit. I did the audit of all the departments. We had an advertising department. So I realized, how do they place advertisement? What is advertising budget? How do they buy media? how does the guy excel? When you say buy media, how much you'll put it in newspapers, how much you'll put it in wall painting. I mean, those days we didn't have cell phones, and how much you'll put in radio spots. So every function and sub-function, there's a huge learning. So when we go with the thirst of learning and show a positive attitude that I want to learn, you will definitely be identified, because the rest of the crowd is only interested. Sadly, we have created a culture where we judge people based on how much money he's making in a particular job, without understanding knowledge is priceless. Okay, let's see the next question. 2 years was in FP&A, now in financial reporting, but how should I go ahead in my career? Well, you have a dialogue with your immediate superiors as to whether they see a potential in you to develop into other areas, and you will volunteer. I know situations the other way around. I have a guy who's been in FP&A for 4 years. I said, look, there's an opening in direct taxes. You're a chartered accountant, please take it. He said, no, I'm quite happy with FP&A, because FP&A, I'm quite comfortable. The problem is, get out of your comfort zones. And in those 20 years or 15 years before you become general manager, try to rotate between 2 or 3 functions. Offer yourself voluntarily. Have career dialogues with your managers. Most organizations are looking for people who want to improve themselves. It is just that we don't ask. How do you deal with an autocratic CEO who doesn't listen to CFO's advice? Well, I have an answer for that. Wait, the autocratic CEO will destroy himself. Any CEO who doesn't listen to CFO's office doesn't last long. Now, having said that, it's quite a what should I say, controversial statement for me to make. You have to build the trust, Baba. If you build the trust, then first time he may not follow your advice, but second time he'll come and say, no, what Bala said was right. So he'll come back to you the next time. That's true. I mean, as teenagers, you don't listen to parents, no? So later on you realize, oh, what my dad said was right, or what my elders said was right. So same here. Autocratic, as everybody said, no, Indian systems is very autocratic. But I won't kind of get carried away by labels. I would use my intelligence and say that, okay, if he didn't listen to my advice, he will learn to it and come back to me. So these key skills, but generally we get stuck to a profile. Then how do we develop a skill? What should be a daily routine of finance manager who wants to be CEO for next 5 years? Well, I would never advise anybody to be a CFO with 5 years experience or 10 years experience, because the expectation from you is the broad thing that I kind of said. You have to be having all those 8 skills, because you're on par with heads of businesses. And say, for example, now communication skills you can develop by yourself. Read a lot, write a lot, speak a lot. Write articles, write blogs. The more you write, the more confidence will come to speak. The more you speak in your local forum, speak in your industrial forum, go back to your school or college, teach people in your locality. The more you take opportunity, join places where they teach you public speaking, the more you will understand. As I said, you cannot be a CFO in 5 years. It takes time. At least this is my view, because the expectation is too high. What additional traits are required when the organization asks a CFO to be the CEO role? It's extremely important to understand that you have to develop the next CFO. Because please understand, if you have been the CFO for X number of years, you vacated and you have not trained somebody, then you will have this gap. Now, you can't be both CEO and CFO because, when you become a CEO role, yes, the finance background is very important, but your ability to deal with the external world increases to the 10 power of 10. So mostly you're dealing with customers, potential customers, new customers, existing customers. Most CEO jobs are marketing led, that is external faces. You have to deal with customers in a very convincing way. You have to deal with the collaborators, technology partners, because if you are in a value addition game, you are using raw materials, converting it, creating value addition, and then moving forward. So your ability to understand what are all the direction. Obviously, you've got to be very well developed in the strategic aspect because a CEO essentially is the leader of strategy, and maybe you would have got some insight by doing a lot of M&As, being part of the strategic planning, and understanding the industry. Firstly, of course, you got to have an excellent command over the industry and how the industry works, which is why CFO becoming a CEO generally happens if the CFO has bubbled up from the top, I mean from the bottom. He started at the management trainee level and become a CFO in the company. The 25 years of company experience and also industry experience gives them a very good confidence level. But the whole problem also is the negative side is that people want fresh ideas. And therefore, whether you like it or not, you've been in the same organization for 25 years, you may be very thorough. People generally prefer bringing somebody from outside. Now, it doesn't make a difference whether you're CEO or CFO. As long as you can contribute and find it fulfilling, it doesn't make a difference. But again, these are all personal preferences. It depends on which organization, which board, and which choice people make. And there are no straightforward answers, but this is my answer that I had. Yeah, is there any other questions? These are all the questions that I have.
Bharat, any other question? Acha. What are the basic traits required for CFO?
So basically, you need 5 traits.
Yeah.
And these 5, cannot be got on day one. The first trait that you have got to have is lots of patience. You really, really, really have to have patience. There's a nice story which I would like to relate to your audience. There was a cuckoo, and the cuckoo was being trained to sing. So each cultures, they were asking, how will the cuckoo perform? So the American was asked, the cuckoo is not singing. What do you want to do? The American says, fire the cuckoo. It was asked to a Russian, the cuckoo is not performing. What do you want to do? The Russian said, send it to a concentration camp. A Chinese was asked, the cuckoo is not singing. We have given it enough training. It is not working. What will you do? Kill the cuckoo. The cuckoo is not singing. An Indian was asked, what will you do? Transfer the cuckoo. The cuckoo is not singing. A Japanese was asked. And he said, wait, the cuckoo will sing. So patience with people is extremely important for a CFO. That's the first trait. The second trait, which is very critical, it's got to be a superb people manager. Now, why is people manager now getting so much focus? Is that you got to take interest in people not as designations, but as people, as persons. Now that comes from a genuine need of loving people, saying, how can I help this guy? Okay, I'm a successful chartered accountant. I've cleared my exams at the first attempt. I got a rank. Now I'm having a decent job. Not everybody is so well endowed. But do I see the spark in the guy? If I don't see the spark in the guy, then light that spark, show him the way, take genuine interest. When people take genuine interest, when you take genuine interest in people, you'll be surprised how they respond. Most CFOs have no time. They don't even talk to anybody down the line. It's very sad. That's because maybe our technical education makes us less people oriented and more technology oriented, technology from a point of view of our own profession. But we need to be having the people oriented trait. The third trait is humbleness. No matter who you are, please understand you have to be humble enough and be accessible to everybody. There are times when people call you up even in the middle of the night or on a weekend. If you're humble and accessible, humbleness comes from being accessible, then you'll be surprised how much people will reach out to you yourself. The fourth trait, which I think is very critical, is to have reading as a habit. I mean, I'm coming from an era before YouTube. So we acquired knowledge only by reading. Both reading the journals, the Institute's journal, the Economist, what is happening in the world by reading Time magazine, and reading Economic Times, Business Line, what is happening in the Indian economy, and reading books. What is the latest thinking on innovation? What is the latest thinking on problem solving? In Board of Studies, we have a book club which beautifully discusses a book every week or every 2 weeks. The fourth trait is reading. And the fifth trait, which I always believe is very critical, is always being positive. I mean, our training makes us see the worst. Obviously, we are conservative. By nature, we can only see the conservative part. But as I explained in the example, we always look at, okay, I spend the money, the guy is trained, he goes away. Whereas somebody is able to show me, saying, what if they stay? So these 5 traits are the calling cards of a successful CFO. They're people oriented, they are humble, they are wanting to learn, they read a lot, and they have an ability to connect with people. More and more I look, the more and more I realize you have to have all these 5 qualities. I'm not saying integrity as a quality because that is given. A chartered accountant has to had a very high level of integrity, both intellectual and in personal life. So I don't even look at it as a trait because that is given. Without that, the organization will not take you to the senior levels. So I hope I've been able to answer your question, Dr. Mishra. Of course, the ability to take failures in
Yes, sir.
the ability to
What
take.
are the basically, if we are talking about what are the basic requirement whenever you are talking about in the skills, well, the basic skills requirement for the chartered accountant to become the CFO?
Well, I told you the basic skill is understanding the industry very well. If you want to be the CFO, because you're going to represent your industry and your organization, understanding the industry very well, understanding the strategic aspects. See, the problem with accounting is that it's very transactional based. It's extremely important to see the strategic part of it, understanding competitive behavior. How do we understand strategy? What are the strategy? Of course, you want to win against the competitor, which is why you are in the business. Understanding what is it that the competitor is doing differently, can we also do it? Most organizations are successful because they are doing better than the competition. And who says you are better than the competition? It's the customer. So understanding the industry that you are in, saying what is it that makes you successful in that industry. First skill, of course, is very good technical knowledge in both the core accounting and the periphery functions, which is taxation, banking, treasury, audit. The second function, as I said, is the regulatory aspect. We really need to understand the various aspects, and it is getting more complicated with each day. Not only in olden days, we didn't have so much of FEMA related issues. Then came RBI. We didn't have so much of SEBI related issues. Now SEBI compliance itself is very intense. Of course, you get help. I mean, you are not the, you're not the walking encyclopedia, but you've got to understand what are the implications. And sometimes, I'll tell you why this is critical. Say tomorrow you have a board meeting and you're working towards your board papers. Your chairman might call you and say, can you put a note to the board of considering buyback of shares? You can't tell the chairman, hey, listen, we've got another 8 hours before the board meeting or 10 hours before the meeting. You have to say, yes, sir, we'll get it done. Now, if you're not understanding about the buyback provisions, then you won't be able to do it. Now, if you ask the question, where did this thought trigger in my chairman's mind that can be considered buyback? Because you see buyback happening all over the industry. Every day you're reading in the newspaper. So you kind of ask yourself, Acha, buyback mein kya hota hai? What really happens in buyback? What are all the provisions required? What are all the regulatory regulations required? So you kind of update yourself, and the acid test will come when you're caught in a situation. Most situations are such that people want it in half an hour, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. That's all the window that you have. So the important thing is, as I said, not only technical knowledge, but also very good understanding of regulatory aspects, getting very good understanding of the strategic impact of that particular business. That means what makes that organization tick in relation to the customers. And of course, people management. Extremely important that you retain your team, you develop your team. Just because you're paying salary, today's world has completely changed from my world. In our world, we are very happy that we had a job. In today's world, a guy doesn't like you, doesn't like your style, doesn't like the work culture, doesn't like, so many dislikes can kind of surface. If you don't create a career for people under you and show them the path, then you're not going to likely to retain people. So you got to be a good people manager and and ability to manage talent. This is a skill which is one learns, one adapts, and one practices. You should ask this question: why should the guy get up in the morning and come and work for your organization and work for you in the department? If you have honestly answered that question for him, because he will ask this question some point of time or the other. If you're able to show the big picture, I've been able to stop a lot of people from living by telling, hey, listen, you have put 5 years, you're very close to your goal of being the next level. Believe me, you have the potential, the next opportunity is yours. And I give him that opportunity. Now, when people realize that, oh, this guy is interested in me, you push people to go to seminars, they won't go. You push them. You ask them, well, how much certifications you are giving. When I had this thing, I tell my people, look, you got to have these 5-6 certifications in your spare time, certain courses. Have you kind of done this course? So you constantly challenge them. We used to say that, okay, 50% I will pay, 50% you pay. Sometimes these seminars can be very costly. We send them abroad. When I take interest in developing people, then people will also stay with me. So excellent people manager is another skill set. Strategic thinking, regulatory aspects of it, and communication to the stakeholders. These are the qualities that is required. Communication we have because we always, I don't give too much importance to knowing speaking English, as much importance as I give to writing English, because you will get very little opportunity. 20 minutes, 25 minutes. That also you're lucky with your chairman or with your board or with your director. They don't have time to sit for chat with you for 2 hours. So whatever you say, you would say in your note, in your concept paper, in your white paper. If you have an idea, how do you kind of articulate that idea, carry it forward and sell that idea? Those are issues which comes only from practice. Now, lots people think communication is speaking. Of course it is speaking. I'm not denying the fact. But communication is also writing. Can you write? Comes from practice. Can you articulate your ideas? Try it out. Write as much as you can. Because writing is a difficult skill. Speaking is not a difficult skill. Of course, it's a tough skill. But writing is a difficult skill. Whenever somebody comes with a problem, I said, you know what? Good point you are making. Can you give a note to me? Chances are people go back and don't give. That's because his thought process is not clear. If his thought process is clear, he'll be able to put it into a note. Now, let me share you an example. When I started my career, I was at internal audit. I used to come back and we used to write the reports, So one day my manager saw me writing reports from my working paper. He said, no, in our company, we don't write reports. We dictate reports. So I said, why? He said, your thought process will be very clear. Whatever point you want, you dictate it. We used to dictate to the secretary. She used to take it in shorthand, make the reports. Now, over a period of time, of course, we didn't have any emails. We always used to dictate. Our day started with a huge amount of stuff in the in tray, and we kind of look at it, the letters, we dictate our responses. Because India was a different era. Same thing. Technology tools, in many ways, have not aided our mental capacities. When I gave my CA final, there were no calculators. You have to be fast on your calculations. Mentally, you have to be very, very fast. Of course, I didn't say this as part of a skill, but an analytical skill, looking at numbers, you should say, what is the differential percentage? Which, of course, I presume that most of us have. Otherwise, I'll add it as another skill, Dr. Mishra, that ability to kind of is going to make an important. So, I see a lot of people say, how is artificial intelligence going to affect the role of a CFO? Well, nobody knows. There's a lot of hype on AI, but there are no use cases which says that I'm going to take away your entire accounting department. So I've given a lot of talk on AI. AI can help you in ensuring some of the mundane tasks are automated. Say, for example, if you have accounts receivable, typically what happens, somebody sits there and creates an email, the accounts receivable team, to the customer, hey, you know what, 15 days from now, you have to pay us so much of money. Now, these reminders can automatically be generated by AI by looking at the customer and looking at his past track record. And people who pay on time, you don't have to send reminders. people who delay, who delay, you start sending them emails a month before, because these people are habitual defaulters. Some of this is what they call, okay, this is basically pattern recognition intelligence. So this is what AI will do to help you kind of automate the process. AI can help you in compliance. It can straight away kind of pay the PF on the due date if you want to trust it. Or it will compute everything and say, look, press this button. This is the amount you want to check. This is the PF for this particular month. Obviously, the PF is coming from the salary journal voucher. When you do your salary journal voucher, you say your basic salary plus earnings minus deductions, and PF will be one of the deductions. The sum total of all those deductions is your PF that you have to deposit. So now somebody does it, somebody kind of takes it, somebody gets an approval. AI might be able to do that. So some of those level of automation will happen with AI, but CFO's job, nobody is going to take away, because there's a fair amount of strategic level thinking and articulation and communication that is required on an ongoing basis. So that AI is not going to kind of help it. Thank you so much, because I personally believe that the human factor is very, very critical. The CFO has to be seen as a human being and not an enforcer of rules, throwing books at people and quoting rules as why it cannot be done. He has to find a way to say how it can be done. And there are many ways.
Sir, two basic questions.
Yes, sir.
One is that what is the basic difference between the finance controller and CFO?
Very good.
Second question is that one is how we can differentiate in that one in terms of the role clarity, Chief Executive Officer as well as the Chief Finance Officer.
Okay, sir.
Because in terms of whenever we are talking about the today's era, startups they are founding, and that one is role clarity is to be more precise whenever we are talking about the startups or the new industries, whenever we are talking about.
Sure, sir. A controller is in charge of the scorekeeping. That's all. That means the controller will be in charge of transaction, that is capturing the data. He'll have a team, he or she will have a team, and compiling the accounts comes out of the this thing. She'll be putting, I'll say she because my controllers are all ladies, but doesn't matter. She'll be kind of passing all the journal entries, closing journal entries, liability journal entries, reversing liability journal entries. These are all part of the closing process. A controller will be focused on generating the financial statement as per the accounting standards and normally accepted accounting practices of that organization. He or she will be responsible for all the numbers in the organization coming out of an accounting system. So he or she will maintain that accounting system in fine, fettle, and order. Ensure there is ledger scrutiny, wrong accounts are not charged, the wrong appropriate liability has been calculated properly. This is the job of a controller. Now, some of this could be territory controllers and global controllers. What a territory controller will do, same thing for a particular territory, but apart from accounting, will also take care of, because these are all smaller territories, not big ones, will take care of compliance, will take care of the tax computation, the VAT computation, because it flows from the invoices, the sales invoicing, and quite apart from just the pure accounting, will be in charge of the sales part, generating the sales invoices. From the sales invoices, will be generating the VAT or the GST, as you call it, and ensuring that the statutory liabilities for that particular territory, which is essentially related to labor-related statutory compliances or employee-related, in terms of paying the medical insurance premium, ensuring that the reimbursements for the various expense are done properly. Those are all the transactional aspect the controller will do. The CFO, of course, is responsible for the policies and for exceptions. If there are any exceptions to policy, the CFO will give guidance to the controller. Say, for example, somebody has traveled from US, but because of a certain storm or because of some weather conditions, he or she had to stay for 7 days, allowed, stayed back for 2-3 days because the tickets, flights were cancelled, blah, 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 and therefore has incurred much beyond the entitlement. These are real human related stories. So here the controller will come to the CFO and ask for special permission, saying I'm convinced that certain extraneous conditions happen. The expense realization reimbursement is the controller's job. The exceptions are handled by CFOs. Sometimes it is delegated to the controller, saying up to a certain monetary level, you can take an issue. If it is something really outside the policy level, come to me. So it varies from organization to organization. The CFO handles the external portion of the internal organization. That means the CFO deals with the head of marketing, head of quality, head of manufacturing. These are the three major in any organization. The manufacturing guy and the we call it production, we call it manufacturing, or we call it deliveries in IT. The marketing or the sales guy. These two people have to be kind of correlated with the finance CFO. And CFO will play the role in ensuring the resources are not of supply. Sometimes raw material could be a short supply. Should we buy more raw material? Should we stock more raw material? At times, finished goods will pile up on the other end. What is it that we need to do? Should we do the discounting? Should we kind of get rid of the stocks, or should we cut down production? These are all the typical transaction related issues which the CFO does. The controller will not do. Controller will only do day-to-day accounting and transaction relating and capturing the data, the scorekeeping part of it. The CFO actually is the external face of the finance department to the internal teams and also to the external world. Now, the difference between the CEO and the CFO, the CEO is purely external and certain extent internal in terms of policies or setting directions to people. The CEO has only 6 or 7 people or 8 people to report. He'll have the CFO, head of marketing, head of quality, head of production, who else? Head of HR. These 5 major functions will report to the CEO. But the CEO will report to the board, to the chairman. He will handle customers. He'll be worried about business, growth. And he will play the orchestra between the 3-4 functions in terms of planning the growth, always looking at it strategically, where we will be 3 years from now, what is it that we need to do, what are the capital expenditure that we need to do, what are the acquisitions that we need to do, what are the markets that we need to access. It's purely an external facing strategy related role is what a CEO does. Of course, aided by the CFO in terms of numbers and ideas. But ultimately, the company succeeds or fails, it is the CEO who takes the credit or the CEO who takes the blame. And therefore, the CEO's job is a little more challenging. But a good CEO-CFO combination is always been the success behind very successful companies. You take any successful company, when you say successful, has the company grown steadily? Has it added market capitalization steadily? Has the employees' engagement been high? These are the 3 parameters which you kind of judge a company from. And that comes from a combination of the CEO, CFO, and also the CHRO. The head of HR also has to play a lot of roles in policies and people engagement.
We are, sir, very much thankful to you on enlightening us in that one is particularly corporate finance leadership skills for the chartered accountants. We want that one is session, that one is whatever you have delivered is more elaborative and the more impactful for the members of ICA. We are once again thankful to you for deliberating on this corporate financial leadership skills aspects of the Chartered Accountants of India. And that one is whenever we are talking about that one is in this platform, you have deliberated at the good topic. And that one you in future, we are expecting that the chartered accountant, whenever they are thinking about this CFO, they'll take care of your points, whatever you have deliberated. With this, we are thankful to you, sir. And we are thankful to each and every participant who has joined this webcast. So that with this, we conclude the today's session. Thank you to all.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. God bless you all.